Welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar series. Today's presentation is titled, Let Us Reintroduce You to Your VPN, a Rapid Response Discussion, presented by Forescout. A few housekeeping rules before we get started. Everyone's lines have been placed on mute, but you are welcome to submit a question through the Q&A window at any time, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. Everyone in attendance at the end of the webinar will be receiving a DoorDash gift card to their registered email address. Now, I will pass things over to Chris Boykin, CTO of I got the king in my head, FutureCom, to speak briefly about our services capabilities. Chris, go ahead.
All right, it is Friday morning, and this is the Future King. So we're so glad that you joined us this morning. A little bit of Tiger King music to get the show started off. Hopefully you guys have, well, I don't know if it's hopefully you've seen it or not, but if you didn't get the reference, then it's the biggest hit on YouTube this year so far. So if you didn't get it, I did see one person comment in there that Carol did it. So pretty funny stuff. So anyway, just thought we'd give you a little bit of entertainment on this Friday morning. My name is Chris Boykin. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at FutureCom, and we are co-hosting this webinar series this morning with Forescout. They will be presenting a little bit later on visibility and control of a remote world. So we wanted to start off the webinar this morning just by letting you know a little bit about who we are here at FutureCom, in case you've not worked with us before. Maybe this is the first time you've heard of us, or maybe you've been a customer of ours for a while and you just don't know everything that we have to offer. So figured we'd kind of fill you in a little bit. So we've been around for a good long time, almost 30 years now, and we're headquartered out of Grapevine, Texas. We serve all over the United States, mostly focused in on the Texas and Oklahoma regions, but we're focused on cybersecurity, consulting, and cloud. And what does that look like to you guys as customers and clients? Well, what we have to offer is all the way from the internet down to your desktops and mobile devices. We have solutions that we can bring to you guys. We are anything that you see on this list right here that's showing, these are technologies. This is what we call our solutions map. These technologies actually, we have multiple solutions within these. Could be products, could be services, could be a whole lot of different things. And again, if you see something on here that applies to your company, which most of it probably does, then we have a solution for you that we can help with. So why use FutureCom? Why is it important to have a partner like us? Well, the increasing complexity that's going on in our world right now, this is fundamentally shifting. Remote users, prolific growth in the data and devices, cloud infrastructure, consumerization, every bit of that are driving growth and advances. But these are rapid business changes and things that we weren't certain were coming, but we could see it a little while back, and it's paramount that our organizations continue to be competitive and able to stay up to acceptable levels of risk. We all know how difficult that is in these days, mostly because we have a shortage in the labor field in cybersecurity. Some statistics are telling us that 62% of organizations that are out there are understaffed when it comes to cybersecurity staffing. And even for those that have positions that they're trying to fill, it takes 3 to 6 months for them to fill them, and some of those are never even filled. You know, in just a few years from now, we're supposed to have, you know, if predictions are correct and we don't get more people into the cybersecurity labor force, then we're going to have a shortfall of almost 2 million cybersecurity positions that are out there are not going to be able to be filled. And this makes it difficult for companies to survive because, you know, security is a huge deal today, especially with all these remote workers that are happening during this pandemic, and there's so many other factors around it. But the hackers aren't going anywhere, and so we have to get more people into the labor force. So as well, you know, there's been these three overarching challenges that continue to drive this, the architecture strategies and management decisions around this. There's complexity that continues to increase, you know, with expanding the attack surface, not only from, you know, the workplace, which was common, but now back to your homes, to the phones that are in your pocket, to the smart devices and all of that. The threat landscape has just become that much bigger. And then, of course, time is imperative because we have to act quicker now because the threats continue to change on a regular basis. And, you know, daily, hourly, sometimes every minute, things are starting to change in our world. And then, of course, with the resource constraints, like we talked about, not having enough headcount, maybe even having budgeting restraints, you know, these all fall into the complexity of it. And so we're forced to try to resolve with more risk faster and with fewer resources. And this just makes it very difficult for us as companies to survive. And so having a partner like FutureCom can help in that way. We offer a lot of professional services, what we call consulting services, to our clients. And this is just a quick little glance of some of the things that we have to offer. We know that many people can sell you products, and a lot of times that just goes to the lowest bidder. But when it comes to consulting services, you need somebody who's going to do it right the first time. And we have over 25, almost 30 years of experience in doing just that. And you can see from this slide that I have up, we do work on implementation of some of the major firewall vendors and IPS vendors, major security vendors that are out there, you know, NAC vendors, visibility vendors, a whole lot of different things that fall under that. But as well, we have some managed services that we offer to our clients. We do auditing, we do identity and access, we deal with compliance. So our professional services, consulting services run the gamut. And so what we want you to get out of this is that we are here to help. And during a crisis like this that we're facing that's unprecedented, we have solutions that could definitely help you guys. Around our consulting services, we do not only cybersecurity, but we also deal with networking and we deal with performance. We do things such as design and architect different solutions, obviously regulatory compliance consulting, best practices, firewall assessments, and the list goes on. And we do this on a regular basis. Even during this time of quarantine, we've been able to do a lot of these services remotely. In fact, our consulting services group has increased during this pandemic due to all the remote workers and the issues that come along with that. As I mentioned before, we also have some managed services. We run a human security program where we teach and train end users to be more secure and be aware of cybersecurity threats and actually decrease the attack surface by a significant percentage by getting those people actually not just trained and tested, but getting them to change their behavior and how they go about doing their daily activities. Some of the other managed services that we have are managed email security, endpoint security, managing some of your firewalls and other security devices that are out there that maybe you don't have the bandwidth in people, that is, to cover. And then we also, for people who have staff and they just need some help along the way, we have some co-managed services where we can provide that to you guys. And that is it for me. I just wanted to give you a quick overview and let you know what FutureCom has to offer. If you'd like more information, we will be sending out contact info and other things at the end of the presentation that would allow you to get in touch with us and set up meetings so that we can determine what kind of solutions best fit your environment. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Chris. Great job. Now we're going to hear from Forescout system engineer, Ted. Ted, you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everybody. I'm Ted Slockbauer, and I'm a systems engineer with Forescout Technologies. Today, I'll be presenting on how you can leverage Forescout to manage and ensure that devices are compliant before connecting to your VPN. So the organizations previously used to have the majority of their users on site at a location or multiple locations, and they allowed managed devices on the internal network. There may have been a separate BYOD network that would allow for maybe laptops or phones or tablets, and then a small percentage of remote users or teleworkers. Given the current pandemic with the COVID-19, the whole deployment or access of the network has flip-flopped. Now the number of campus users is a smaller percentage compared to the remote users. Also, another major change is that not only are managed devices connecting to the network, in many instances, BYOD is connecting to the network as well. And in this situation, it's unique that BYOD needs to have internal access to the network because there's a large number of employees that may not have been issued a corporate laptop. In that case, then the only devices that they have available to them to VPN with are their own personal computers at home. So that creates a bigger challenge for organizations, since now they need to figure out how to balance productivity with security. And they don't want security to be a disabler. At the same time, they need to make sure that the environments are secured and these home computers are not introducing any risks. So some of the questions that you need to ask yourself is, who is connecting and from what device? Is this device a corporate issued device or not? And if not, how do you ensure that that device is compliant? Do you treat those corporate assets differently from those non-corporate assets? Meaning, do you restrict the type of access that they have to their internal network because you're not sure if they're running antivirus or if they're fully patched? How do you ensure that these devices are being scanned by vulnerability assessment tools? How do you ensure that these devices were not previously set up in your VA tools like with Rapid7, Tenable, or Qualys? Now you need to add these subnets. But then again, these devices are coming on, maybe reusing IP subnets or IP addresses from a pool from the VPN. How do you ensure that they're always up to date, these scans that are occurring on these devices? And is a scan in the VA tools IP address representing a device that was previously scanned, but now has that IP address assigned to a different device? These are all challenges. How do you know that all of your security agents are up to date, installed, or even running? Another major challenge, how do you remediate these systems? So what is your patching strategy? How do you include security updates to these devices, especially if these devices are not managed or not part of your organization? So what can you do to authorize or allow unauthorized applications, or how do you control these applications? A major challenge, because it could be a home computer that could have games installed on it. Maybe it's a shared family system. And then how do you control access to the inside network based on user or device type? And then finally, you can't forget the existing devices that are already deployed on your internal network. So some of the challenges with your VPNs are, who is the user? What's their LDAP credentials and what rights do they have within LDAP? What groups are they members of? What's the function of the device? Is it a Windows system, a Mac, or Linux? Does this system have proper access? Should it be allowed to have access to the internal network? Or should it be allowed to have access to confidential systems? If you block it, are they able to do their jobs? If you allow it, are you granting too much permissions? And where are they connected? Typically within the corporate environment, Forescout can quickly identify and detect which switch port a device is connecting to, or SSID, or a wireless access point or controller. With VPNs, it's pretty straightforward. There's typically only a few VPN appliances that may be deployed within your organization. But exactly which VPN appliance are they coming in on? Then finally, how do you be able to do a posture assessment against these devices? Are they running blacklisted or unauthorized applications? Are there services or processes that are mandatory and should be running? Or maybe they should not be running? Are there outdated security agents? Do they need to be updated? How do you push updates out to these remote systems? Or do you even want to push out a security agent to a BYOD type device? And then finally, patches, vulnerabilities, and many others. On the internal network, it's pretty straightforward since these devices typically are easy to manage. It could be a corporate device where Forescout can easily remotely connect into this device either with an agent or agentless. We support Windows, Macs, and Linux with the agent or agentless approach. For the agentless approach, we're able to log into Windows systems using WMI. For Linux and Macs, we can log in using SSH and do a full, deep assessment against these endpoints. So what are some of the ways that Forescout can discover these devices that are connecting to the network? One way could be that an agent connects to a VPN concentrator. An example could be a Cisco ASA appliance. And from there, we're able to do authentication for the ASA as an external authenticator. It could be in the form of Radius or LDAP. Or we could be a proxy for LDAP or for Radius to existing external Radius servers. The benefit of that is that we can then take a device and remove it from the VPN connection by communicating back to the VPN concentrators. Other ways that we can learn about new devices that have connected to the network is via NetFlow or SFlow. This information can also help us to understand when a device has disconnected. If we see no traffic from a device after a period of time, we can consider that device offline. Another method of learning about devices is to have a span session, collect traffic from the inside interface of that VPN appliance. Again, if a device disconnects from the network, we'll no longer see traffic from that IP address. Another benefit of span is that it gives us some additional security capabilities, meaning that we can do things where we can intercept traffic, like in the form of HTTP traffic to send notifications to users, or maybe install the optional security agent secure connector. We can also leverage syslog notifications or syslog messages to learn about new devices that have connected to the network. And then we can leverage API calls to be able to disconnect devices from the network in the form of adding IP addresses to dynamic address objects or dynamic address groups. So as I mentioned before, Forescout provides manageability of VPN-connected devices for Windows, Macs, as well as Linux systems. The manageability can be agentless through WMI or SSH. We also have the option of using remote registry protocol as well for Windows systems that may not have WMI running. We'll try using WMI first and then revert to remote registry protocol if that's enabled. We can also deploy an optional agent for users that have successfully authenticated on the system. From there, we have the option of allowing them on the network or blocking their access until the agent is installed. Once we install the agent, we have the ability of doing a full assessment of that system, determining if it's meeting the corporate security compliance requirements. The most common requirement that I have seen is at a minimum, at least running antivirus. And the main reason is that they may not have a zero-day threat protection agent installed on the system because it is a home computer. Another benefit of using the secure connector on these BYOD devices is that the agent can be installed persistent, meaning that the next time the user connects, they'll already have that agent installed and we can immediately allow that system on the network, or you can install it dissolvably. And what that means is that the agent will be removed from the system automatically whenever the system reboots. If they disconnect from the VPN, the agent will realize that it's no longer communicating with the Counteract environment or the Forescout environment and automatically stop running. And then when the system's rebooted, that's it, it's gone. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you can allow corporate devices as well as BYOD devices on the network. Of course, you can just totally block BYOD as well. These are all policies that are your decision to make. We will never demand or dictate certain policies. We want it to be flexible so that you can integrate and allow devices on the network based on your security needs. What's unique about Forescout is that we can continuously assess these devices that are remotely connected. All of Forescout's policies, by default, will be reapplied every 8 hours. You can tweak these timers to make them shorter intervals. This way, you're guaranteeing and ensuring that your devices are always compliant throughout their connection to the network. We can act fast with notifications and remediations. Examples of remediations could be that we could start a broken agent, an agent that's not running, or maybe even download a script or batch file to the endpoint that can execute, map to a remote share, and then start the installation executable. We support a broad range of antivirus vendors. There's 38 AV solutions that we support right out of the box. Other things that we can check for are to make sure that your disk is encrypted. Is it running? Do they have the mandatory security agents like Microsoft SCCM? These are just a few to name that you may be looking for your corporate managed systems. And you can create different policies for different systems. The systems that are managed via remote inspection could do a fuller assessment of the compliance of the device, whereas a device that's a BYOD running the secure connector, maybe you might only want to run a policy check to make sure that antivirus is installed. Then finally, we can provide an increasing level of controls and notifications to the end users. Maybe you might start off with a system that is not authorized and give the user a notification telling them that they need to install the secure connector agent for this BYOD device before they can connect to the network. So options could be to send an on-screen notification via HTTP redirect, and then request end user acknowledgement once they realize they have to install the agent to allow them to install it. And then once the agent's installed, acknowledge that they can continue working on the network, but knowing that they may have limited access because it's a BYOD device. Again, a lot of flexibility. Maybe you might want to first send a notification to a user that they need to turn on their antivirus agent. And if 10 minutes later the AV is not started, maybe we can try and do remediation by starting the antivirus agent. And if the antivirus agent doesn't start for whatever reason, send a notification to the user that they're going to be blocked from accessing the network, or maybe they should contact the help desk. Or maybe Forescout can even send an email to your help desk ticketing system to open the ticket automatically on behalf of the user. We have the ability of blocking access with the wireless, either through forcing a deauthentication by kicking the user off and saying they're no longer authenticated. We could leverage our virtual firewall, which simply allows for TCP resets for TCP connections, and we can block the UDP sessions for hosts that are trying to connect out to other devices. And then finally, we can do a additional check on the systems via quarantining, and maybe only giving them partial access via ACLs that could be applied to the firewall. Another challenge that organizations face is, how do they know what types of access a user should have on the network? Given that they are VPN users and there's the potential for BYOD being connected, maybe you might want to use a combination of detailed rules that could be based on the user's role and membership of Active Directory groups, or based on the fact that they're using a corporate asset versus a BYOD asset. And that's where iSegment comes into play. iSegment is a solution that allows us to take metadata and send it up to a cloud. This is a complete cloud-based solution. So there's minimal information that's sent up, IP address information, source destination. It leverages flow data or span traffic to understand what's being used for communication. We also can send TCP and UDP port information up to the cloud, as well as group membership information for the source and destination devices. The assignment of the group membership is done programmatically via policy within Counteract. It could be based on information about the operating system, about the user. So we're leveraging taxonomy information about the devices. Internally, on the corporate side of the network, you could leverage this for IoT access and determining the types of connections that these IoT devices are or are not allowed to make. And we can map this out visually to help you to understand what types of policies you can deploy within your environment. There could be devices that are simulated or devices that are in the design stages. Here we see devices with the hashes are in simulation mode, where devices or boxes are hollow. Those are in the design phase. Anywhere that we see a blue dot means that there is a device that is communicating from the segment. So here we could see corporate users are accessing corporate services. We can also see that corporate users may be hitting HIPAA regulated data. Maybe this is not something that we want to see. Wherever there's an exclamation point, we have the ability of notifying it as a violation. You can turn on and off the visualizations. You can apply filters. You can turn on or off the visualization of the traffic just to see where you have policies. And you can turn on or off where you have the actual violations. Another side benefit of Forescout is, because of it having the ability of applying controls not only to endpoints, but anywhere across the network, whether it be a firewall, it could be via API calls to security agents or microsegmentation agents. It could be via ACI or VMware's NSX. All of these are methods that Forescout can apply to control access. So given this complete solution, you now have the ability of extending it to the remote users and then apply enforcement so that maybe users that are part of the finance can access finance servers, but organizations that are not part of the HR organization cannot access HR systems. So Forescout has a very broad support for VPN devices and gateways. We can support the ASA, the Juniper Pulse, Palo Alto next-gen firewalls. The Palo Alto is done through an integration, or what we call iExtend. The iExtend allows you to be able to take the base Forescout solution and extend it to third-party systems via API integration. F5 is done through the iExtend Connect, which are customizable extensions that you can leverage to be able to allow integration with third-party systems that Forescout has not built integrations for already. Any VPN concentrator that supports API functionality can be used with this integration. Not only do we have iExtend module for Palo Alto, we also have it for Fortinet and for Checkpoint. But of course, if you have another firewall that has an API functionality and can leverage things like dynamic address objects, where we can take an IP address of a client and push it to an object that's applied to an ACL, that can be used to control the access. Then natively within Forescout, we have the virtual firewall, as well as other technologies like DNS and Force to control what devices can access what within the network. So Forescout has the ability of discovering and identifying all of the devices that are attempting to connect to the network, whether it be internally or across the VPN. We can authorize corporate devices immediately. If the device has a secure connector agent, we can allow that device on the network immediately. Or we have the ability of installing the secure connector agent on these BYOD devices to allow for basic connectivity checks or compliance checks. And the reason why I say basic is that more than likely you'll have more advanced checks for your internal devices versus a BYOD device where you may only want to see antivirus. We can extend the compliance then to all of these remote devices and ensure that they maintain their compliance by continuously checking for agents, apps, vulnerabilities, and leveraging the secure connector for the BYOD devices. Because of the fact that Forescout has the ability of continuously monitoring these devices, we can also ensure that they stay compliant through remediation. So there's a tremendous value in that we're allowing devices on the network, automating the remediation of these devices, ensuring that they stay compliant. And if for any reason a device is not able to become compliant, open up a help desk ticket for you. This significantly reduces the exposure of your organization. It allows you to do much more with ensuring compliance with fewer resources, and it's allowing your organization then to have a significant return on investment. So there's an integration guide that Forescout recently posted to our support site. I realize that this is quite a very long URL. So what you may want to do is go and do a search on VPN integration at www.forescout.com. You can get other details as well for installing some of the extended modules that we have. You can install them for trial purposes for some of the firewall vendors that I mentioned before. We do include the base integration with Pulse Secure as well as for the ASA firewall. Typically, you can leverage an evaluation period with those downloads for the iExtend modules. So this way you can try them out and make sure that they work for your organization if you already are a Forescout customer. If you have questions, you can go to the Forescout community and ask questions about the deployments and how Forescout can help you with your deployment of your VPN and ensure that your environment stays secure. And then, of course, you can always contact your local Forescout or FutureCom account team. So at this point, we'd like to open up the floor to questions.
Okay, thank you, Ted. It looks like we do have some questions popping up in the question and answer box. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one. This one is, what criteria can you check for on BYOD devices?
So if the Secure Connector agent is installed, we can check for anything that you really want us to check for. I mean, we have the ability of looking at files. We have the ability of looking at the registry. We can see which processes are running. We can see what services are running. We have the ability of seeing what applications are installed on the system. So really, there's a broad range of things that we can do checks for.
Okay, wonderful. I also have, what vulnerability scanners do you integrate with?
So we integrate today with the Tenable, Rapid7, and Qualys scanning systems. And the benefit, just to elaborate on the integration and what it does, is that we have the ability of being able to do an assessment of the system and see when the last time a scan occurred on that system. If the scan is outside of a predefined threshold within Counteract, as far as what's been configured in Counteract, then we can communicate to the vulnerability assessment system and trigger a scan real time. This is very beneficial for systems that may be on the network intermittently. An example could be a VMware, or it could be a salesperson that only connects to the network intermittently. Could be a VPN user. Here, we're giving you the ability of ensuring that all systems are scanned within your predefined threshold period. And then we can collect the information from that scan and apply policy to these systems that may have critical or high severity vulnerabilities that were detected on them.
Thank you. Hope that answered everybody's question. And then here's the next one. It says, what SIM solution does Forescout integrate with?
Okay, so great question. We have the ability of integrating with Splunk, with the IBM solution. IBM has a SIM. I'm sorry, I have to apologize. I'm doing a mental break on the other one, ArcSight. So there are three primary solutions that we can do integrations with using Forescout. And the benefit is that it's two-way communication. So we build parsers for the syslog messages that we're sending to these solutions. So you can leverage the information that we're sending as far as the contextual information of the host properties of these systems. So instead of just having an IP address in your SIM when you're trying to do a security assessment, maybe an event occurred and you're trying to do some forensics investigation, instead of just having an IP address, now you know what switch port, what VPN concentrator, what access point, what the host name was, who was logged in. You can send information about the applications that were installed or the processes or services that are running. It gives you information to look to see if there's any malware that may be running as far as a malicious process or service. So there's a tremendous amount of information that we can send, making these systems far more intelligent. The other thing is that if they detect any types of malicious events using their own internal forensics and policy investigation capabilities, they could send a notification to Forescout to take an action on a particular device. This way, it automates the whole process. Instead of sending an email to a security intelligence agent or somebody that's in the forensics team, you can automate that isolation of the device and maybe even kill the offending process that is malicious.
Thank you. Okay, I have another one here. This one is, with the ability to ID devices trying to connect, what kind of information does that supply on the devices for IDing them?
So there's a number of things that we can collect about the devices. If it's agent or agentless, it doesn't matter. We can collect the same type of information. So with devices across a VPN, they're more than likely going to be limited to endpoint computing systems. So they could be just a Windows system, a Mac system, or a Linux system, or it's internal. It could be an IoT type device. So we have a number of ways of discovering devices passively by inspecting traffic, looking for things like HTTP user agent strings. We could look for DNS queries. We can look for DHCP requests and what the options are in the requests. These are all ways that we can passively discover what the operating system is. Once we know what the operating system is, we can then decide whether we want to do a remote inspection and using the proper remote inspection techniques. So once we know it's Windows, we know we want to use WMI. If it's Linux or Macs, we'll use SSH. Properties that we can collect that can uniquely identify the system, and things that we use to help identify the system could be service banners, using a Nmap, lightweight Nmap scan. It could be looking at ports that are open either via remote inspection or via traffic that we're seeing and learning about from SPAN or from NetFlow or SFlow or IPFix. Again, there's a lot of ways that we can collect and learn information about a device. There's hundreds of unique properties that we have the ability of learning about a device that we keep within our database.
Thank you. Okay, how about, are there additional licenses needed for the third-party solutions like Palo Alto?
So yes, those are what we call iExtend licenses. And those are additional licenses for Palo Alto, for Fortinet, or for Checkpoint. Cisco and the Pulse Secure are included with the base product. If you're looking to do integrations that you want to customize with other solutions that we don't have predefined integrations for, you can build your own using the iExtend Connect.
Okay, thank you. Here we have one. Is there any lack of functionality if you don't use an agent?
So if you're wanting to inspect BYOD devices, an agent would be required. If you want to make sure, let's say that the antivirus software is running on a BYOD system, you definitely would need to install the agent. But if your policy is to not allow BYOD across the VPN, then we can simply leverage the remote inspection to do a detailed analysis of the system. Any system that we can't do remote inspection on, meaning that we don't have the ability of logging in through WMI, we would consider to be a rogue device, and we would block those devices from having access.
Okay, thank you, Ted. We've got a few more here. How long would you recommend staying in monitor mode before you move to any block control?
That really depends on the health of your environment. So you may have situations where machines are authorized systems, and you may want to, you may have an issue being able to connect into them for whatever reason. Maybe for some reason GPO didn't push out the proper firewall policy, and the firewall is blocking us from being able to remotely connect to a system. So you'll find that there are systems that are not configured correctly initially. And a lot of it's going to depend on the size of the organization. An organization that only has, a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand devices may be a very short period of time, because there's far fewer devices that you'll have to clean up and get working properly. So it might only take a couple of weeks. But if you're an organization that has several 100,000 devices that are connecting either internally or via VPN, it might take a few months. So it really depends a lot on the organization. I wish I could give an exact answer and it was the same answer for everybody. But really, it will depend a lot on the size of the organization and the health of the environment. But the benefit is that Forescout gives you immediate visibility to the devices and what the health is of those devices, so that you can clean those devices up. And you can easily export information about the devices that are not being able to be remotely managed, or may not be able to properly install the agent on, and then export that information to the help desk team so that they can fix those issues, either through GPO or maybe a remote session to the computer. Another benefit is that we don't need to have, the user does not need to have local administrative rights to install our agent. We may not be able to do remediation on the system if the person does not have local administrative rights, but we can still do the full assessment of the device to make sure that it is compliant, and then send notifications if it's not.
Okay, great. Okay, what is the difference on regular licensing versus flex licensing?
So Forescout used to have per appliance licensing. What that meant was the licenses were tied to an appliance. So like a CT10K had 10,000 licenses, and a CTK4, a CT4K had 4,000 licenses, et cetera, et cetera. And you had to buy the licenses based on the size of the appliance. Now that could be a problem, because maybe you needed a powerful appliance just to manage, a large deployment of switches, and you had to buy licensing for end users, even though it may not have been managing end users. With flex licensing, it takes the licensing and removes it or decouples it from the appliances, and instead centralizes the license management on the iManage platform, formerly what we used to call the Enterprise Manager. And this way, now you can right-size the appliances without having to spend extra money for licensing to do specific functions. So it's a much more cost-effective measure or way of deploying Forescout for our customers, because now they're not limited or tied to licensing for appliances.
Interesting, thank you. I also have here, how can we get a POC?
So POC can be handled either through FutureCom or Forescout directly. Either way, you can actually even download a 30-day license from our website, and you can test and deploy. It's best to have a knowledgeable resource assist you with it. We have a set of policies that can be installed in the environment to help you do the baselining of the evaluation, essentially.
Thank you. So it looks like I have one last question here. In all honesty, do you think Carol Baskin killed her husband?
Who? I guess I'm crawling out.
Nice.
Chris, do you want to answer that
Very
one?
nice. Yeah, I'll take that one. Most definitely. Most definitely. Goodness gracious. All right. Well, that obviously came from somebody who was listening to the music and was here at the very beginning of the seminar. Thanks for that. Thanks for that question. That's funny. That is funny. It looks like we're done with the questions though here. Katie, you want to wrap this up?
Yep. So it does look like, I just checked, it does look like all of the questions have been answered. So I just want to take some time to thank our presenters, Ted and Chris, for their time today. If you do have additional questions that you think of, then feel free to reach out to your account manager here at FutureCom and we can assist you moving forward. I also want to take a moment to remind you of our next webinar scheduled for Friday, May 1st, and that one is going to be about FutureCom's human security in a remote world. To sign up, you can visit our website, reach out to your account manager, or you can use the same link that you used for this webinar to sign up and sign up for that one or any additional future ones. Other than that, I don't have anything else, so just stay safe, stay secure, stay home. Thanks, and have a great lunch.